When we are small, we look to the people who raised us to be mirrors. We look to them to see ourselves reflected back, not just our physical form, but the landscape of our budding inner lives. We look for a nod that says we are seen, a calm presence that signals we are safe, and a steady hand that suggests we are held. It is an instinct as natural as breathing. But what happens when that mirror is cracked, or worse, when it is turned away? There is a profound, quiet ache in realizing that the environment you were raised in did not provide the security, the validation, or the warmth that a growing person requires. It is not about blame, but about acknowledgement. It is the realization that a fundamental piece of your foundation was missing, and you have been carrying that weight for years, navigating the world with a hunger that you couldn't quite name. Think back to those moments when you felt small. Perhaps you had a big feeling, a burst of excitement, or a shadow of fear, and you reached out, expecting a safe place to land. But instead of being met with understanding, you were met with yaupats, impatience, or perhaps a lecture that completely missed the point of your experience. In those moments, you didn't just feel alone. You learned a very specific, quiet lesson, that your inner world was somehow too much, or not enough, or simply not the priority. You learned to tuck those feelings away, to dim your light, to swallow your needs before they could ever reach the surface, because you realized that expressing them didn't bring the connection you were craving. That silence becomes a part of the architecture of your life. It is the background noise you stopped hearing because it was always there. It manifests as a persistent feeling that you are constantly needing to justify your space, your opinions, or your very existence. When someone asks you, "What do you need?" you might feel a sudden, paralyzing blankness. It is not that you don't have needs. We all do. It is that you have spent so much time convincing yourself that your needs don't matter, that they have become buried under layers of self-sufficiency and caution. This is the weight of carrying your own history. You are essentially doing the job of two people. You are trying to navigate the complexities of adulthood, and you are simultaneously trying to provide the emotional guidance you never received. It is exhausting work, yet you do it with a quiet, hidden resilience. You have developed a sense of self that is defined by how well you can survive on your own, how little you can ask for, and how quickly you can recover from disappointment. But realize this: your current discomfort is not a sign of failure. It is a sign of an awakening. It is the part of you that knows you deserve more, the part that is tired of the silence and is finally ready to speak. The ache you feel is not a symptom of being broken. It is the natural, human response to having been left to fend for yourself in a storm. By naming this silence, by admitting that you did not get what you deserved, you are finally giving yourself permission to stop holding your breath. You are acknowledging the legitimacy of that ancient, unmet hunger. And in doing so, you are creating a tiny, fragile, but immensely powerful opening for a new way of being. You are taking the first, most important step toward becoming the person who finally, truly listens to you, and who recognizes that you were worthy of that attention from the very beginning. It is time to let that silence end, not by finding someone else to fill the space, but by learning how to fill it yourself with the kindness you have been so desperately searching for. Most of us spend years trying to fill that void from the outside. We look for it in our jobs, in our relentless pursuit of achievements, or in the specific, sometimes precarious, people we choose to be close to. We hope that if we just do enough, if we are productive enough, kind enough, or successful enough, the gnawing, hollow feeling of missing out will finally fade. We imagine that there is a missing piece out there, a puzzle part that belongs to us. And if we just search hard enough, we will finally click into place and feel whole. But the truth is, the void isn't something that can be filled by others, no matter how much they might love us. It is not a container waiting to be filled. It is a space where your own voice was meant to grow, but didn't have the room to breathe. Think of that void not as a lack of something, but as a result of having to prioritize someone else's comfort over your own development. When you were younger, you likely had to learn to shrink or adapt to survive the emotional climate of your home. You became an expert at reading the room, at sensing moods, and at adjusting your own behavior to keep the peace or earn a scrap of approval. You developed a version of yourself that was designed specifically for external consumption. The void you feel now is the distance between that adaptive, performative version of you and the genuine, unexpressed self that has been waiting in the wings all this time. It is the feeling of coming home to a house that was built for someone else, where none of the furniture quite fits your frame, and none of the light hits where you actually need it to. Acknowledging this doesn't mean you are broken or that you are inherently lacking. It means you are finally becoming aware of the architecture of your own internal landscape. You have been walking around with a map that was drawn by people who didn't know the terrain, and it is perfectly natural to feel lost when you finally realize that the path they gave you doesn't lead where you want to go. When you stop trying to force others to inhabit the roles of the parents you deserved, you stop the exhausting cycle of disappointment. You stop waiting for someone to walk through the door and provide the validation you have been starving for. This is the hardest, yet most liberating part of the journey. You have to look at that hollow space and stop fearing it. Instead of running from the emptiness by throwing more distractions into it, more work, more noise, more external validation, you begin to sit with it. You look at it and say, I see you. You are the part of me that wasn't allowed to exist. When you stop trying to fill the void with temporary things, you create the stillness necessary to actually hear yourself. You start to understand that you are not a damaged object that needs fixing. You are a person who has been deprived of the nourishment needed to realize your own potential. This process of acknowledgement is like finally taking off a heavy coat you've been wearing for a lifetime, even though it never fit. You feel a bit exposed at first, perhaps even cold, because the void is raw and unaccustomed to the light. But it is only in that exposure that you can finally start to see what you actually need. You start to discern your own desires, your own boundaries, and your own capacity for joy, independent of what was expected of you. You are moving from a state of reactive survival to a state of conscious creation. It is a slow, quiet work. But every time you choose to acknowledge your own experience instead of silencing it, you are effectively laying a brick in the foundation of your own life. You are deciding that you are the final authority on who you are, and that your own presence is enough to fill the space you occupy. You are no longer searching. You are arriving. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." For those of us who grew up without the parental support we deserved, we often carry the patterns of our upbringing as if they were destiny. We walk through the world feeling as though we are on a preset track, repeating the same emotional outcomes over and over. We act out scenarios. We react to conflict with a sudden, sharp defensiveness. We hold back affection because it feels dangerous, or we distance ourselves before anyone can get close enough to leave us. Not because we consciously choose to, but because we are operating on an internal map that was drawn by people who couldn't show us the way. We call it luck, or we call it who I am. But often, it is simply the echo of our history ringing in the present. Think about the times you've found yourself stuck in a loop. Perhaps you are in a professional setting where a manager gives you constructive feedback, and suddenly you feel that familiar, hot rush of shame, as if you've been caught doing something terrible. You aren't just reacting to the critique in front of you. You are reacting to 1,000 similar moments from your past where a mistake meant you were unlovable or wrong. Or perhaps you find yourself constantly over-functioning in your friendships, carrying the emotional load for everyone else, because somewhere deep down you learned that being useful was the only way to ensure you wouldn't be abandoned. This is the fate Jung was talking about. It is an automatic, lightning-fast response that bypasses your rational mind. It's like wearing a pair of tinted glasses you've had on for so long that you've forgotten they're there, and you simply assume that the world is inherently dark or gray. When you don't have the parents who could help you interpret your world, you have to create your own meaning. And often, that meaning is colored by the limitations of those who raised you. You assume that because they were overwhelmed, you must also be destined to be overwhelmed. You assume that because they couldn't see you, no one truly can. Recognizing this is the first step toward reclaiming your agency. It's a moment of profound realization that the voice inside your head telling you how to act, how to feel, and what to expect from others isn't actually your voice. It's a ghost. It is a set of instructions you were given that you never actually agreed to. But you've been following them faithfully, simply because you didn't know there was another way to navigate. Reclaiming your agency starts with that tiny, uncomfortable pause between a situation and your reaction. It's the moment you notice the internal pressure building, that urge to run, to fight, or to shut down, and you choose to stay present instead. You ask yourself, is this reaction coming from the reality of this moment, or is this coming from my history? It's not about judging yourself for having these reactions. It's about acknowledging their origin. You aren't destined to keep repeating the same patterns. Those patterns are just habits, deeply etched grooves in your nervous system that you can begin to smooth over with time and intention. By making the unconscious conscious, you are stepping off that preset track. You are taking the map out of the hands of the past and starting to draw your own. It is an act of rebellion to say, I see where this comes from, and I am choosing to do something different. You are no longer living by default. You are beginning to choose your own responses. It's messy, it's slow, and it requires a tremendous amount of patience with yourself. But it is the beginning of true freedom. You are finally, after all this time, starting to live your own life rather than repeating theirs. One of the most profound and difficult parts of healing is the realization that we have, over time, internalized the voice of the parent we didn't have. It is a strange and often painful phenomenon. We become our own harshest judge, carrying on the tradition of criticism or neglect that we were exposed to in our earliest years. If you were criticized, you now monitor your own mistakes with a magnifying glass, expecting failure before you even begin. If you were ignored or dismissed, you may find yourself learning to ignore your own pain, brushing off your own accomplishments, or staying silent when you have something meaningful to contribute. This internalized critic is not truly you. It is a ghost. It is a set of internalized instructions, a script you were handed long ago that you never actually agreed to. When you hear that voice inside your head, the one that says you are not enough, the one that tells you your needs are an inconvenience, or the one that demands perfection just to feel safe, it is helpful to remember that this voice is just a relic of a system that wasn't built for your well-being. It is a defense mechanism gone wrong, a strategy you adopted as a child to try and stay safe, or to gain some semblance of connection in an environment where that connection was conditional or absent. The tragedy of this critic is that it is trying to protect you by mimicking the very people who hurt you. It believes that if it beats you to the punch, if it criticizes you before anyone else can, or if it minimizes your needs so that you don't feel the sting of rejection, then you will be safe. But this protection is actually a cage. It keeps you small. It keeps you afraid. And it keeps you in a constant state of internal conflict. It prevents you from taking risks, from forming deep connections, and from simply existing with the grace and ease you deserve. Understanding this is the turning point. When you hear that critical voice, you can start to pause and ask, is this me? Or is this a fragment of my past? You don't have to fight it, which would only create more internal friction. Instead, you can label it. You can recognize that when you feel that wave of shame for simply being human, you are hearing the echo of those who couldn't hold space for you. You are catching the ghost of an old, outdated instruction manual. By separating yourself from this internal critic, you create the space to respond differently. When the voice says, "You're making a fool of yourself," you can gently offer an alternative. "I am learning, and it is okay to be in the process of growth." When the voice says, "You're being needy," you can remind yourself, "I am allowed to have needs, and asking for support is a sign of my strength." This practice is the beginning of reclaiming your mind. It is a slow, repetitive process of reparenting yourself. You are essentially taking the microphone away from the critic and handing it to a more compassionate part of yourself, a part of you that understands that you were always worthy of care, regardless of what you were taught. It takes time to quiet that ghost, but every time you catch it and replace its rigid logic with kindness, you are weakening its grip. You are finally, after all these years, deciding that you do not have to be your own worst enemy. You are choosing, in the quietest and most significant way, to be your own witness, your own advocate, and your own kindest guardian. You are realizing that the judgment you feared was never about you. It was about the limitations of those who couldn't give you what you deserved. And you are letting that realization set you free. If you didn't receive the validation you needed when you were young, you are now in the position of being the only person who can truly give it to you. This is what we call self-parenting or reparenting. It can sound a bit clinical, almost like a technical term from a textbook, but in practice, it is the most intimate and gentle work you will ever do. It is the act of becoming the safe harbor for your own nervous system. It means taking the responsibility to provide the soothing, the patience, and the unconditional acceptance that you were left to find on your own. You are essentially stepping into the role of the person you needed when you were small, and you are offering that version of yourself the care that was missing then. Think of self-parenting not as a chore or a demanding task, but as a practice of slowing down. When you are caught in a wave of stress, or when you feel that old, familiar sting of rejection, the natural instinct is to rush through the feeling, to numb it, or to fix it immediately so you can return to functioning. Self-parenting asks you to do the opposite. It asks you to stop in the middle of that storm and check in. You can literally ask yourself, what do I need right now to feel safe? Often, the answer isn't a solution to a problem. It is a request for comfort. It might be the need to take a few deep, slow breaths, to step away from a situation that feels overwhelming, or simply to acknowledge the validity of the emotion you are feeling. When you were a child, you likely learned that your big feelings were a burden to those around you, so you learned to stifle them. Now, you are doing the corrective work. You are saying to yourself, it makes sense that you are hurting. Your fear is valid. You don't have to be strong right now. You just have to be here. This process is about validation. When you accomplish something, Even something small, like setting a boundary or finishing a difficult task, you might have a habit of dismissing it, telling yourself it was nothing, or moving immediately to the next goal. Self-parenting is the act of pausing to notice your own effort. It is the voice that says, "I see how hard you worked for this. I am proud of you." It is the act of celebrating your own small wins because you know that no one else can truly understand the weight you have been carrying or the effort it took to move forward. This is also how you start to heal the parts of you that were left neglected. Sometimes self-parenting looks like setting a bedtime, eating a meal that feels nourishing, or choosing to spend time in an environment that is peaceful rather than chaotic. It is the act of honoring your physical and emotional needs as if they were the most important things in the world, because in your own life, they are. You are building a track record of reliability with yourself. Every time you show up for your own feelings, you are proving to that younger part of you that you are now safe, that you are now the adult in the room, and that you are never going to leave yourself behind again. It is a slow transformation. You won't feel like a different person overnight, and there will be days when the old habits of neglect rise up again. That is perfectly okay. Self-parenting is not about being a perfect parent. It is about being a present one. It is about showing up with a consistent, kind, and steady presence, even when things are messy. You are teaching your body that it doesn't have to exist in a state of hyper-vigilance or constant bracing for the worst. You are teaching it that it is allowed to rest, that it is allowed to be human, and that it is, finally, fully supported by the only person who can truly stay with you for your whole life, yourself. When we have navigated life without the steady, reliable support we deserved, our relationships often become the testing grounds for all of our unhealed wounds. It is as if we carry a hidden instruction manual from childhood that dictates how intimacy should look. And without realizing it, we hold every person we meet to the standards or the limitations of that original script. We might find ourselves unconsciously drawn to people who recreate the same distance we knew. Growing up, feeling a strange, hollow sense of familiarity when someone is emotionally unavailable or inconsistent. Or, conversely, we might push people away the moment they start to get too close, because intimacy feels like a trap or a setup for an eventual disappointment. We are often looking for someone to finally fix the original dynamic, hoping that if we just find the right person, they will be the one to give us the validation we missed. But here is the hard truth. Relationships cannot be the place where we resolve our childhoods. When we enter a partnership, expecting the other person to fill that empty space inside us, we are placing an impossible burden on them. We are asking them to be our parent, our healer, and our source of worth all at once. And when they inevitably fail to do that perfectly, because they are just human, just like us, we feel that old, familiar sting of neglect all over again, confirming the story we've been telling ourselves since we were small. The shift happens when we stop looking for others to rescue us. It's a quiet, profound realization that you are not incomplete, and therefore you don't need someone else to finish you. When you begin to focus on your own healing, when you start to be the person who validates your own feelings and honors your own boundaries, your relationships start to change naturally. You no longer need to test people to see if they will abandon you. You are already providing the safety you need internally. This changes everything about how you show up. You stop looking for partners who recreate the past and start making room for people who are actually capable of partnership. You start setting boundaries, not as a way to push people away, but as a way to protect the integrity of the relationship. If someone is inconsistent, you no longer assume it's a reflection of your worth. You see it as a reflection of their capacity. You can walk away or adjust your expectations with a sense of calm rather than a sense of panic. You start to show up as a whole, grounded individual who can communicate clearly and hold space for others, not because you are trying to earn their love, but because you are capable of offering it from a place of abundance. It is a slow, often delicate process of unlearning. You will catch yourself falling back into old patterns, feeling that surge of anxiety when someone doesn't text back, or feeling that urge to perform just to be liked. And that is okay. The goal is to notice it, to take a breath, and to remind yourself that you are safe enough now to be real. By taking the responsibility for your own emotional security, you move from a place of needing to a place of choosing. You start to build connections based on mutual respect, shared values, and genuine care, rather than a desperate attempt to heal old scars. You are no longer looking for a savior. You are looking for a teammate. And in that shift, you create the possibility for the kind of connection you always deserved, one that is steady, honest, and truly seen. Jung once noted, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." This journey of healing is not about going back to change the past, for that is the one thing no one can ever do. Instead, it is about changing how that past lives in your present. It is the quiet, daily courage to stand in the middle of a familiar, uncomfortable pattern and decide that you are going to act differently this time. It is the moment you choose to pause, breathe, and act from a place of conscious awareness rather than automatic habit. It is an act of immense, unsung bravery to stop being a passive product of your environment and start being the architect of your own character. When you realize you have been living by a map that leads only to disappointment or isolation, it is natural to feel a sense of grief. That map was all you had for so long, and it feels daunting to set it aside. But think of the freedom that comes with holding a blank page. You are not required to follow the old, jagged lines that dictate how much space you are allowed to take up, or how much love you are allowed to receive. You are beginning to draw a new route, one that prioritizes your own well-being, your own peace, and your own authentic expression. Changing the map means learning to navigate the terrain of your own emotions without needing a guide to tell you if you are doing it right. It means when you feel that old, sharp impulse to apologize for existing, you stop and ask, "Wait, what did I do wrong?" And realize you did nothing wrong at all. It means when you feel the pull toward a self-destructive habit or a relationship that keeps you small, you recognize that urge not as a necessity, but as a ghost of the past. You learn to recognize the difference between the reaction, which is fast, loud, and feels like fate, and your response, which is slow, deliberate, and entirely yours. This takes immense courage because it requires you to be uncomfortable. It requires you to sit with the anxiety of the unknown. When you have spent your whole life being told who to be or how to behave to stay safe, choosing to be yourself can feel dangerous. Your nervous system might fight you, shouting that you need to go back to the old, familiar ways, because those ways, while painful, are at least known. But you are building a new internal nervous system that understands it is safe to be you. You are proving through your own actions that you can survive the discomfort of change and arrive at a place of stability on the other side. Every time you choose to honor your own needs, you are redrawing the lines on that map. Every time you speak your truth, even when your voice shakes, you are carving out a new path. It is not about reaching a final destination where you are suddenly healed and perfect. It is about the continuous process of showing up for yourself. You are deciding that you are worth the effort of this navigation. You are deciding that you are the master of your own journey, and that the history you carry is merely the prologue to the life you are now. Finally, starting to write. You are taking the authority back, and that is perhaps the most courageous thing any person can ever do. There is a profound, quiet shift that happens when you stop measuring your value by what you did or did not receive from others. For most of our lives, if we grew up without the support we deserved, we learn a very dangerous equation. We believe that our worth is something we have to earn. We think, if I am good enough, if I am useful enough, if I am quiet enough, then I will be worthy of love. We look at our accomplishments, our ability to withstand hardship, or our capacity to care for others as proof that we deserve to be seen. But the truth is, your worth was inherent all along. It was never contingent on being praised, being seen, or being cared for in the way you needed. Your value is not a prize to be won. It is a fundamental truth of your existence. When you stop letting others define your worth, you begin to understand that you are allowed to take up space simply because you are here. This doesn't mean life is suddenly effortless, but it does mean you stop apologizing for your existence. You start to see that the validation you were starving for wasn't something you had to earn. It was something you were entitled to simply by being born. Learning to believe. This is the hardest, most vital work of self-discovery. It requires you to look at your reflection not just in the mirror, but in your own choices. And accept that you are enough, exactly as you are, without adding or subtracting a single thing. By learning to care for yourself, you are actively proving to your nervous system that you are safe. When you set a boundary, when you advocate for your own needs, or when you simply rest because you are tired, you are sending a powerful message to that younger part of you. You matter to me. I will not ignore you. You demonstrate, through your own actions, that your feelings, your goals, and your boundaries are not negotiable. This is how you rebuild your internal house. You are replacing the foundation of "I am only worth what I do" with a new, sturdy foundation of "I am worthy because I am." This shift also changes how you handle the world's reactions to you. When you know your own worth, you don't need everyone to like you, and you don't need everyone to understand your path. If someone dismisses you, it stings, but it no longer shatters you. It is the difference between a house built on sand and one built on solid ground. When the winds of outside judgment blow, you might sway, but you do not topple. You remain anchored to the knowledge that no one else has the authority to grant or revoke your value. This is a practice you have to return to daily. There will be days when you feel small, days when the old scripts run through your head, telling you that you haven't done enough or that you haven't arrived at the right place. In those moments, you can offer yourself the validation you once begged for. I am enough. Say it to the parts of you that still feel like a child waiting for approval. Remind yourself that you have survived, you have grown, and you have, through sheer resilience, become the parent you needed. You are your own primary witness, your own deepest supporter, and your own greatest source of value. That is the kind of worth that cannot be taken away by anyone, because it is held securely within you. When you didn't have the parents you deserved, you often find yourself wandering through adulthood with a hollow, confusing feeling that you are playing a game where you never learned the rules. You look around and see others seemingly operating from a manual they received at birth. They seem to know how to handle conflict, how to rest, and how to define what is okay and what is not okay. Meanwhile, you might feel like you are constantly winging it, terrified that at any moment someone will realize you don't have a script. The reality is, most people are just doing the best they can. But when you lacked foundational guidance, the responsibility to write your own rulebook feels incredibly heavy. You have to decide, from scratch, what your life will look like, what you will tolerate, and what you will absolutely refuse to accept. Creating your own standards is the ultimate act of reclaiming your life. It means sitting down with yourself and asking the hard questions that you were never encouraged to ask before. What does respect feel like to me, not in theory, but in practice? How do I want to be treated when I am upset? What is a reasonable expectation for a conversation? You are no longer defaulting to the environment you were raised in. You are designing a new atmosphere. If you were raised in a place where silence was the standard for handling pain, you might decide that in your life, naming your pain is the standard. If you were taught that your needs were a burden, you might set a standard that says your needs are the very compass that guides your choices. This process is not about becoming rigid or creating a list of demands to control others. It is about creating a code of conduct for yourself. It is about knowing where you stand so you don't keep drifting into situations that make you feel small or unsafe. For example, you might set a standard that you will no longer engage in circular, hurtful arguments. Instead, you will state your boundary once and then step away to preserve your peace. You might set a standard that you will celebrate your own milestones, regardless of whether anyone else notices or validates them. You are defining what enough looks like, what success feels like, and what love actually entails. The discomfort in this is that, for the first time, you are the one responsible for the quality of your own life. There is no one to blame if things go wrong, but there is also no one who can take credit for your growth. When you set a standard and someone crosses it, you are the one who has to hold the line. That can feel lonely, especially at the start. You might worry that by holding higher standards for how you are treated, you will end up alone. But you will find that as you uphold these new standards, you naturally start to attract people who respect them. You stop being a magnet for those who take, and you start becoming a magnet for those who contribute. This is a living, breathing practice. Your standards don't have to be perfect, and they don't have to be permanent. They are simply the guardrails you put in place to ensure you are moving in a direction that feels authentic to you. You are allowed to adjust them as you learn more about who you are. The most important thing is that they are yours. You are moving from a reactive state, where you were constantly bracing yourself for the next external demand, to a proactive state, where you define the climate of your own life. You are crafting a sanctuary, one boundary and one decision at a time. And that is a beautiful, deeply grounding transformation. Healing is not a destination. It is a practice. There is a common misconception that if we work hard enough, if we read enough, and if we process enough, we will one day arrive at a place where the pain is completely gone, the past is entirely erased, and we are suddenly permanently fixed. But the truth is much kinder and far more realistic than that. Healing is not about reaching a finish line. It is about the way you walk through your days. There will be days when the old, heavy patterns rise up, when you feel that familiar pull toward self-doubt or that old urge to hide. And that is not a sign that you have failed. It is simply a sign that you are human, and that your history is still a part of the landscape you are navigating. The freedom of moving forward is found in the way you handle those moments. It is the shift from being a victim of your past to being a participant in your present. When those old, difficult feelings arise, you no longer have to be crushed by them. You have developed the capacity to notice them, to name them, and to treat yourself with the patience you were once denied. You are learning that the goal isn't to be perfect or to be emotionless, or to have a perfectly curated life. The goal is to be present. You are building a capacity for resilience that is far more valuable than a life without challenges. Think about how much you have already changed. You have looked at things that were once too heavy to hold, and you have slowly, bit by bit, broken them down into something you can carry. You have learned that your needs are legitimate, that your voice has value, and that you are allowed to occupy space in this world. Every time you choose to show up for yourself, even on the days when you are tired, even on the days when you are uncertain, you are making a choice that is entirely your own. You are proving to your nervous system that you are safe, that you are capable, and that you are worthy of your own care. Moving forward means letting go of the need for the past to have been different. It is a quiet, profound surrender. It is acknowledging that the people who raised you could only give what they had, and that even if it wasn't enough, you have found a way to bridge the gap. You are no longer looking backward, waiting for them to change. You are looking forward, focusing on the life you are actively building. You are the parent you needed. You are the witness you longed for. You are the one who finally knows the way. This freedom is not a loud, dramatic event. It is found in the quiet moments, in the way you talk to yourself when you make a mistake, in the way you set a boundary without needing an excuse, in the way you allow yourself to rest without guilt. It is the steady, grounded sensation of standing on your own 2 feet, knowing that even if the ground shifts, you have the inner strength to find your balance again. You are building a new foundation, one day and one choice at a time. You are capable of providing the safety, the patience, and the love that you were once denied. You are, finally, truly in charge of your own life. And as you walk this path, remember that you don't have to do it all at once. Take it step by step, breath by breath. You have already done the hardest part. You have chosen to look, you have chosen to feel, and you have chosen to stay. That is where your true power lies. You are moving forward, not because the path is clear, but because you trust yourself to walk it. You are home, and you are finally, fully your own. We often treat healing as an architectural project, something to be built, finalized, and inspected for flaws. But if you look closely at what you have been doing, you will see that it is actually more like tending a garden. You are not building a static structure. You are cultivating an ecosystem. Some days, the work is heavy. You are clearing away the debris left by seasons of neglect, digging up old, knotted roots of doubt that have been tangling your path for years. There are days when the weather turns, and the old shadows grow long, making it hard to see the progress you have made. You might feel the familiar sting of wanting someone else to come and water the soil for you, to tell you that the harvest will be worth the labor. But look at what has started to bloom in the spaces you have cleared. Because you stopped looking for your reflection in others, you have begun to see yourself clearly. Because you stopped trying to fill the void with distractions, you have made room for your own voice to resonate. Every boundary you have set is a fence that protects your peace. Every moment you have validated your own hurt is a nutrient that feeds your resilience. The freedom you are feeling now is not the absence of the past. It is the presence of your own agency. It is the quiet, steady realization that you are the one tending this land. You no longer need to wait for a specific environment to be right or for certain people to validate your growth. The soil is within you. The water is within you. The sunlight is the compassion you have learned to offer yourself when things feel difficult. There is no finality to this. You will continue to plant, to prune, to weed, and to watch things grow. There will be seasons of quiet and seasons of rapid change. But there is a profound peace in knowing that no matter what the world brings, you have become a person who can look after your own inner world. You are the parent you needed. You are the home you were searching for. And you are, in every sense that matters, finally free. If this reflection on healing and self-parenting touched something within you, I would love to hear from you. Please share a thought or an experience in the comments below. What is one small way you are choosing to show up for yourself today? Your voice is a part of this community, and sharing your journey can be a powerful way to honor the work you are doing. Thank you for being here.